Hello, and let's continue with game engines, Unreal Engine lab number 6. And in the first part, we were left on the point where we wanted to synchronize the doors as well. So currently, the doors are completely local. However, it causes some issues that on the server side, when the door is open on the server side, the client can actually still clip through it because server is the king, and vice versa. When I open it on the client, I can't actually, because the server has it closed, I can't actually go through. Server is pushing me back. This is invalid move. So how it should work is that whenever any player is pulling the lever, it should open on all the other clients and then the server and be synchronized. So most of this functionality is implemented in the lever class. This implements the interactable interface, and it has this event interact and event reset. And when we interacted, then it did everything else, set the timer and opened and started animation and called all the other events and the class that was interacting was on the first person character. I have it here. So in our character class, we have the tick event where we are doing the line trace by channel every frame and saving the hovered interactable to a variable. And then in the interact action, when the player presses the button, it sends it calls the interact function on the interactable, so on the lever. And this here everything that we have here is all local behavior. So tick happens locally and input action happens locally. So we send this event to the local instance of our lever. So we might think that, okay, let's just make this interact to a server function. We can't really do that because in the interactable interface, the functions can't be server or client side because the object itself it's not replicated, it's interface. So instead, instead we have like two places where we can send this thing to the server. We could do it in the character, or we can do it in the lever. But in reality, there is only one place where we are allowed to do that, and that's in the character. Because if we want to do it in the lever, call a server event, we are not authorized to do that because the client does not have the authority, ownership over the lever. Yeah. So yeah, everyone can call it. Nobody's owning the lever, and only we can only. So in the lever we can't send pretty much remote procedure calls from client to the server. So, but we can do it in the first person character. This is what we are owning. Through the player controller, we have the ownership over our character. So here we can make a custom event. Let's call it server interact. Oops. All right. Now the server interact, and in the server interact, we can call the interact on the interface, and here we can call the server interact. Okay, but now we need to give a target to the interact method. So we need some object reference. Of course, we can just pass it through this custom event, like so, and connect it here. And it will work. However, it's not a proper way to do it. And why it's inappropriate is that it will it will actually break the server authority. Now some malicious players who can make cheat programs, they can create a cheat that changes this package, and pretty much they can make a software that allows to call this server interact whatever target they want to, and make a sheet that allows them to open any object even if they can't see that. So to stick to the server authority rule, we shouldn't directly send any object reference like that. Instead, let's remove it from here. Instead, we will just use the hovered interactable that's already in the server. So server is simulating this character as well. It also runs the tick, does the line trace, and knows where the character is watching. And we can use the interactable that is in the server and just send that one. And now the player really can't hack this. All right, so let's see how it works. So let's run it again. Now when I open it on the client side, it still opens on the client. Okay, let me see. Maybe I forgot to make it the server server event. Yeah, I need to make sure that this server interact is also running on the server, and it's reliable. Should always go through. All right, let's try again. Okay, so now when I'm opening it on the client, it actually opens it on the server, and that's how it should be. Whenever we open it, if you open it in the server, it still opens it in the server, and only the server knows whether the lever is pulled or not. So we should delegate it back. So send signal back that the server opened the door. So to do that, in the lever we can actually create custom events that are multicast event. So in the lever, in the server side, we can actually create a multicast event, interact multicast, or multicast interact. Make it multicast, make it reliable, and now whenever the interact event is called on the server, we will also multicast it to all the other clients. And in this case, we actually don't even have to do much else. So when I run the game, open it in here, it opens. Okay, it's still not working. Let's see, it is a multicast. So when the server receives the interact event, it should multicast it back to all the clients. Why it's not working? I know. Because the lever is not replicated. We have to check this replicate checkbox as well. Otherwise, the messages won't go. Any of those messages won't go through. They're actually not connected. So let's try again. So on the client, let's open it on the client. And now it opens on both. And because everything else is deterministic, they will also close at the same time. So yeah, in this case it just works. We can try to use it with 3 players. Now I have to be fast. So, and when I open it on one client, it opens on everyone. And I can open it, go through, maybe try to clip myself through the door. Okay, door pushes me out. And yeah, I think it works nicely. Of course, if you want to implement even more complex logic in the future, it might not be enough. So currently, everything from that point forward will be done locally on all the clients. One of those clients is also the server. That's okay. And server, like, position of objects is still the server still has the authority when it comes to like opening and closing the door, and because the time is always the same, they will all close at the same time, and it's for this use case it just works. Of course, if you want to make it so that other players can sometimes close the door, then you might implement something similar for the on reset function as well. But for now, it will work, and I will not touch it. So yeah, it is always possible to move more things on the server side, but yeah, at right now it's not necessary. So now the next thing, we have almost everything synchronized, but another feature that I would like to add is to make it a real competitive game is whenever you finish the game, it on the mission complete widget, it should also show like high scores of different players. So who finished first and so on. So I have an error. This time it's on the first person controller. Set time. This error probably happens because in the set time, the hard widget for some reason was null. But we are always creating it on the begin play, and we're always setting it. So what's going on? Is locally controlled and set time. We can just check in this force branch. We can just check if this hard widget is valid. it has this branch variant, so we can just add this one here and only set the hard widget when it's valid, and then it shouldn't have this issue anymore. I think it was caused because the player, let's make the number of players back to 2. I think it was caused because the player, the set time event was called later than or called before the widget was actually created on some of the clients. So it takes so it has to do something with race conditions. All right, so how can we implement the high score features? That's the big question. So what the high scores means is that in the widget that we have on a player, we need to know about all the clients that are playing, and we should know all of their scores. And obviously we could just we can just create some custom events, and whenever a player finishes, we can multicast this event to all the other players and get the scores this way. But it's a little bit ugly, and at some point you if you using this like events or remote procedure calls for pretty much trying to synchronize everything, it can get really out of the hands quite quickly. So luckily we actually have this player state class as well, and this is synchronized for every through this player state class. Every player knows the information about all the other connected players, and this is replicated on client and the server about all the players, and we will use this class. So let's make a new blueprint, and let's override player state. Okay, and let's call it blueprint. Let's call it first person player state, like our other naming is first person player state. All right, and in the game mode we can also set the player state class, and let's use our custom first person player state. Okay, now in the player state class, player state actor, we can now add some variables, and such variable can be, for example, the remaining time when the person finished. Or we could also store count like the time it took to finish, which might be a little bit better. So let's call it the time. Yeah, so every player will know their time when they finish. And let's set this default value to -1, for example. Okay, and now whenever a player finishes in the game mode, when we complete the mission, we should save the player's time to the player state. So here we are completing the mission. We know the first person player controller who completed the mission. Let's quickly check the reference sheet again. So player controller should have a one-to-one connection with the player state. And indeed it has the function called get player state. Now we just need to cast it. Because we always know that this player control that we are using this particular first person player state, we can also convert it to a pure cast. This will remove the execution pins and adds a boolean instead. So yeah, so we don't have to. But if we are sure that it's always player state, we don't actually need to validate all that every time, and can get the blueprint a little bit more compact. So in the first person player state, we can now set time like so. And what should be the time? We have the remaining time. Maybe we can just get it so that we are creating another integer start time. We can even make it private and set it on the begin play. To equal the remaining time. Now we know what the initial time was, and this can be the remaining time, or I mean start time minus remaining time is the player's time. Okay. Now in the player state is already replicated, but we also need to replicate the variable. So replication is none. Instead we should let's just try to use the rep notify for now, and let's print something out to see if it displays the time. Yeah, let's just print the time. All right, run the game. Okay, it displayed 3 and this is 10. Okay, and all the clients receive this replication. So yeah, let's leave it empty, but if we want to, we can use this on rep time for updating. Okay, now we have to somehow get it to the to the user interface, and we in the last video we set the user interface in the player controller, but I don't have it open yet. So first person player controller, here it is. So we are creating the hot widget, and we also create the game over widget. So okay, let's actually open the game over widget now. Game over, and we should make like a list of players and their names. So to do that, let's modify this canvas a bit. Let's add another vertical box. We can anchor it to the middle of the screen, or maybe where is the mission? Okay, mission complete is in the middle of the screen, so let's anchor it in the same place. Position size, let's make it like minus 200, maybe minus 300 times 600. The position Y minus 200, okay, and the height 500. So we can add a list of text in here. Okay, let's try to do that. Let's make a text. Okay, and we have those and we can add multiple lines of text. Now, by setting all the texts up manually, it might be quite a lot of hassle. So instead, we will create a new widget for these text rows themselves, and this way you can see how to make these kind of dynamic lists and things like that as well. So let's make a new widget. Let's user interface widget blueprint. Widget blueprint. High score, for example, or high score line, maybe. And on the high scored line, we can turn the main element to not be a canvas, but instead replace with horizontal box. And then add the text and maybe more texts under it. So that first text will display like name, and the second one will display like time. We have such structures. Now, while editing it, we can go back to the game over. And we need to insert our custom blueprint. Okay, under the user created section, we have the high score line. Let's drag it to the vertical box, and we can just create those high score lines, as many as we want to. Let me think. So in addition to horizontal box, we also have like maybe we have something that's okay, the grid panel is not right. Yeah, okay. Okay, let it just be so that we have the name and the time. Also for the name block we can add a little bit of margin, so it pushes the name, the time further away. So we have the name. In the horizontal box, actually we can separate them, I think. No. Why I want to keep them separately is so that I can easily give them different colors as well. So like when the player does not finish it can display the text with red color. The uniform grid panel might be better, but it's here I can add slot padding. Okay, no, then I have to add the numbers. On all of these. Okay, never mind. Let's just stick to the horizontal box for now. And yeah, in Unreal Engine there are multiple ways to format things more nicely. Yeah, but I forgot some of them. Okay, so in the graph we can make our custom events for adding a row. Actually, in this case, we actually even don't want to make a custom event, but instead we just create variables. We create variables for the name. This is a string, and another one for the score, time, and this one can be an integer. And both of these variables we can make to expose and spawn. So whenever we spawn this object, we can set those variables, and then in the construction event, when it will be created, we can just use those variables to set the name and text time. So we have a name text, and time text. And the time text should be variable as well. Okay, name text, time text, and let's set those texts. Yeah, we can convert the string to text, and we can convert the time to a text also. Okay, actually we can even make it so that all the lines are initially created. So I will actually remove the time, only set the text when we create the object, and custom event for setting the time. This one should have an integer that we can place to the time text. And of course we can do the color altering trick, but I will leave that one for you as well. So name and time. Now we have to start making the rows. So let's remove these ones. Let's make the vertical box variable and call it the high scores. And then we should start inserting the high scores to the high scores list. Okay, but the question is where can we get them? So we can, for example, what we can do, we can just add them all whenever it's constructed. But then we need to get all the player data. And the player data comes from the player state. So we need to access the player states. And the player states are connected to the game state as well as the player controller. So every player, every client will know about all the other clients through a list of player states that's in the game state. So for getting this game state, we just have a function get game state. We can call it from everywhere. There is a game state in client server, and then we can get the player array, and the player array contains the player states. Then we can loop over the player array, and for every player we can cast it to the first person state that we actually have in there. And from this first player state we can get player name, we can get our own variable time. So we have our default variable get time, and then we will create a new blueprint, new widget of the from the class of from the type of high score line. Maybe I have to make instance editable as well. Let's see. Okay, interesting. Apparently it does not show the name right here, but that's okay because we have to set the time right away. So okay, let's just move the things from the construction to the set time, and that's all. Okay, let's set the text at the same time. Name. Okay, in the game over. Okay, now it appeared. Apparently it didn't refresh fast enough. Yeah, sometimes you have to refresh it. I thought it's my mistake, but yeah, now I have this variable that I'm not even using anymore. So yeah, it still worked. It shows on the expose it on the spawn, but I already remade it. So okay. Next, let's call this set time. Time and name we can get from here, and finally we should also attach it to our high scores container. Okay, when I start dragging off from the high scores panel, under the panel it has add child. Let's use this one, and the child is the widget that we have just created. I wonder, can I? Okay, it still needs a role asset. Okay, so now it adds on the whenever it's constructed, it adds the times for all the players in the game state. Let's try. And yeah, when I'm running it on the local host, the game state is a bit of funky. Yeah, it has the -1 and in the end, which is the score. So that this is like 2, I guess. Yeah, but I think just that I need to format it just a little bit better to see it clearly. One thing that we can do with the text is we can add some border to the font. It has outline settings. We can just select them both, add some outlines, and Unreal has already some such features built into it. So outline, here it is. Let's add a little bit of outline. Like 3 or 4 maybe. As well as I actually still want to really format it better. There are some spacer. I think that's what I need. I can add a spacer in between both of them, and then make the spacer like, let's give some nice room between the name and the text. That was what I was looking for. Okay, and try again. Maybe we should also do the set the text based on the time value. Let's have a branch. If time is smaller than 0, okay, if it's larger than 0, then it's a valid time, and we set the time, and otherwise let's just make it dash or something like that. So yeah, or not finished or something like that. All right. Okay, target also needs a connection. Open it in the Unreal. Okay, and when I reach the end, okay, both of them are not finished, and the first player's time was 8 seconds. But as we can see, it takes the state, but it's not updating it, so that's why it's a little bit wrong right now. Let's try to figure out how to update. The player state, whenever the time those times changes, the on rep time will also trigger, and to do that, we can actually use it to call to update all the widgets, and in this case we are doing it in a real easy way. So in the first person player controller, let's just make a new event, add custom event, update update high score. Alright, this can be a local event, and here we know the hard widget, but we also need to get our game over widget. So as you know, we can know the player controller is the one that should know about the widgets, should store about them, and we have to communicate through that one. So update high score, and we have the game over widget. What happened? Okay, it appeared there, so I will promote it to a variable. This is vpp game over, and let's save it here and use it as oh, I wonder why we actually added the cast here, because it's already has the type of game over widget. We are casting this is already game over widget, so yeah, actually I don't need this cast at all, I think. Yeah. Maybe it had to be a null pointer check instead. So okay, so I save the widget and add it to the viewport. And now in this custom event, update height scores, I can validate that I have the VBP game over is valid, because we might not have it. It might be null. This is how you check the null pointer exceptions. And if it's not, we can add an event to the game over widget. So let's make a custom event. Create high scores, and attach everything to the create high scores. So we can call all of it in the construct and outside as well. Okay, and then we have the first person player's character controller. I can now call this create high scores if it's valid. Okay, and that will add more lines to the high score table. Okay, and next let's hook this update high scores also to the player state. So whenever this variable changes, we can get all the player controllers. Okay, we can't get all the player controllers. We are on the here we are on the client side, and this means that we can only on the client side we have only one player controller where we want to update it. So that's the player controller 0. We cast it to the first person player controller and call the update high scores. Alright, that was a mouthful. Let's run. This one finishes. It adds lines twice. And it adds more lines, as you can see. So in this case it's interesting. Well, first of all, it added first 2 lines before this this variable was replicated, so not finished, and then it got replicated, and it called it again, not finished, and 3, and then when other person entered the area, it called 8 and 3, and we can just when we delete all the previous ones, then it should show quite the right results. However, I'm a little bit confused that why, for some reason, on the server it's not it only calls the first called it on the first time when we on the pre-construct that we actually don't even really need. Okay, and now I know. Let's try it again. Let's remove the one that was in the construct. So this other one player took 3 seconds, other is not finished, and this when on the server it's not updating the list at all, but it's updating it on the client. And the reason is that on the server, when we are updating it on the server game state, where is it? We have the first person in the player state. When we are updating it on the game mode, is changing the variable, the on-rep time will only trigger on the clients because they are actually getting the new value from through the network, and on the server there is no need to replicate it. Let's see if I can change it. Probably not. So instead, when it's on the server, we should also update the high scores separately. So let's do that. Let's open the game mode that's only in the server, and here we change the we set it with notify, but we have to copy this part here as well. So to update its own high score. Okay, and now they should behave similarly. So this one gets the message, and yeah, it also happens on the server. Okay, actually now we got the two signals, but luckily they will cancel out, and it's okay. Okay, where is the high score? High score is in here. Game over blueprint. Okay, and one more thing that we need to do, we need to clear the previous records. So to do that, we need to get the reference to the high scores, and it has function clear children. You can also manually loop over them and clear them this way, but when we are only keeping them once, I think it should. Okay, one line, and those lines also changed, and I think the high score functionality is working. So let's add a few more players. So he finishes. Okay, the second player finishes, and then the host finishes itself, and the high score is updating them, updating its results quite nicely. All right, so that was a lot of thinking and connecting different pieces together, but I think we managed it quite nicely. Of course, we can also format it, maybe use some format texts and add some second symbol. Behind there, change the colors, maybe draw the current player differently. But these are all like polishing details and should not really affect the gameplay. Okay, now it's 4 seconds, 10 seconds, and so on. Alright, that was all for today's practice, today's lab, and we have one more lab to go, but not too many more things to do. So the final lab will be will be easier. We will implement player some functionality to actually build the game and connect players together in localhost. So right now they are automatically connected, but we can automate this, or not automate this, but make it so that we can enter our own IP address and connect them together. And then the second Unreal project should also be quite finished, and you can get points for that. Alright, thank you for participating, and have a nice day.